We all have those tipping point moments, don't we, when we realise something isn't right, that you've crossed the line. Like those holiday snaps in which you suddenly realise it's time to go on a diet. Well, an unflattering statistic about the UK economy slipped below the radar this week amid all the noise around interest rates and Vladimir Putin's short-lived army rebellion. It's the horrifying statistic that the UK's total government debt reached more than 100% of the size of the economy in May, sitting at a terrifying £2.6 trillion. Yes, you need the word trillion now because billion just doesn't cut it. The debt pile is now 100.1% of the nation's gross domestic product. We are in the full throes of a profound economic crisis. Raging inflation, soaring debt, and interest rates rising exponentially, impacting mortgage holders and sucking money out of the economy as people pay more on home loans rather than purchasing goods and services. Renters in our great cities already pay too much thanks to the failure of successive governments to build, baby, build. And they will be further impacted as landlords pass interest rate increases onto them. Repossessions will increase, which is a tragedy for the families and individuals involved, and the dream of home ownership slips further from the reach of millions of Brits. Of course, we know how we got here. Years and years of money printing, thanks to the likes of ex-Governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, who hilariously blames Brexit. Of course he does. Of course, what it really was the bonkers decision to borrow £500 billion in a wildly failed experiment to stop a seasonal respiratory virus. One potentially nasty, yes, but mild or non-fatal to most. Let's not forget, we paid perfectly healthy people a large portion of their salaries to stay at home. Well done, everyone. So where do we go from here? Well, it couldn't be simpler. It's time for an all-out war on inflation, because this evil stealth tax is like an atomic bomb. It nukes the whole economy, spiking the costs of goods whilst reducing the value of money. And the only lever, one which should have been pulled by that prize numpty Andrew Bailey at the Bank of England years ago, is to crank up interest rates. The government are effectively going to have to damage the housing market and may need to more or less provoke a recession later this year by design in order to tackle the tsunami of rising prices. This may seem drastic or even reckless, but so does chopping your leg off until it means saving your life. We all know about Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges, and by far the most important one is to tackle inflation. Rising inflation is a vicious circle, but falling prices is a virtuous one, in which goods become easier to buy, and the value of people's wage packets and the pound in their pocket increases in value. High inflation is a lose-lose, low inflation is a win-win. It's the ultimate tax cut, which is why, in a huge test of his leadership, Rishi Sunak must stand up to the union barons and their inflation-busting demands. This whole story and the inflation has implications for public sector workers' wage demands. To yield to what they're asking for, we'll see inflation baked into the system for years to come. Now, the likes of nurses and teachers clearly deserve a bump. They do great work. But the government must strike a balance between individual wage demands and the wider needs of the economy. Tackling the cost of living is the only show in town. The inflation, the national debt and sky-high interest rates prove that Britain needs to change course. And it's not just wage discipline or the painful medicine of rate rises. There is one other issue that no politician in the country is brave enough to tell you, so I will tell you. This country, this great country of ours, lives beyond its means. You know about balancing household income. You know what's coming in and what's going out. But those wonderful, wise people that lead us are happy on our behalf to live on the never-never, saddling future generations with debts and liabilities to pay for current commitments. It's ultimately a Ponzi scheme so egregious it would have notorious financial crook Bernard Madoff blushing. So if you're serious about tackling inflation, reducing that debt, and getting the country back onto a sustainable path, you're going to have to cut. Extraordinary waste in the public sector, yes, including the NHS, must be addressed. People proudly boast that our health service is the biggest employer in Europe. That's not something to celebrate. That's an admission of its wild inefficiency. Britain needs to go on a financial and economic diet. It's time to slim down public spending and perform liposuction on our bloated public services. Britain needs some tough economic love. And for those that don't like it, tough luck.